Hello, everyone out there listening. This is the episode 1 pilot to The Bracket, the podcast from SHG Broadcasting. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, whenever you're listening. I am Alex Pryor, and we are discussing today the best Tom Hanks film. And alongside with me is...
Addie Fry.
Luke Ports.
Jack Gaffney.
And I'm Mr. Talkin.
Mr. Talkin's going to go ahead and explain how we chose these films for this bracket.
So what we did is we looked at the top grossing films. We did a little bit of work to do some inflation adjustment to make sure that it was fair for some of the older films, and then we multiplied that number of whatever their gross and inflation adjusted gross was. We multiplied that by their Rotten Tomatoes score, so that films that did both well in money but also in Rotten Tomatoes scores would both be those would be the ones that would rise to the top. And with that, we took our top 16 films. From that, sadly, a few really good ones were left out. One of my favorites that was left out is A League of Their Own, but some things just had to be cut.
Unfortunate. And then there were terrible films like The Davinci Code that were in there.
Made a lot of money.
So, the first argument is the first seed going up against the 16th seed, which is Toy Story 3, and that's Luke Ports taking on that, with Jack Gaffney taking on The Polar Express. Which one is the better film? Luke, I'm going to let you start because you have the number 1 seed.
Okay. So, Toy Story 3, I think, in a lot of ways, it capped off the first story of Toy Story. It completed, like, Andy's arc, where he went off to college. And, Toy Story is such an iconic set of films. It kind of defined Pixar, like, in its early stages. And I feel that, again, they just kind of ended off that whole first arc with Andy.
So, Polar Express, when I watched the movie and I heard the conductor, I just heard Tom Hanks, and I knew that was Tom Hanks. And with Toy Story 3, it just doesn't seem like the most noticeable film. Even though, yes, Tom Hanks is Woody in all of them, it just doesn't seem like the most known Toy Story, at least to me. When I think of Toy Story, I think of 1 and 2.
Okay, Luke, your 15-second rebuttal.
Well, at least Tom Hanks is the main character in Toy Story 3.
Okay, Gaffney, go ahead.
The conductor in Polar Express is a very known role and iconic in the film for Polar Express. And, yeah.
Okay. I'm also going to jump in and say the Polar Express, so I would say the conductor is the main character in that movie. Like, you follow the kid, but, like, who do you remember in that movie? It's not that. The kid literally doesn't have a name. His name in the movie is, like, the boy. And also, not to mention, Tom Hanks also plays, like, that creepy homeless guy that, like, is a ghost but isn't a ghost at the end. And I'm pretty sure he's also the voice of Santa Claus. So he has, like, 3 roles in that. Yeah, go ahead.
The problem with Polar Express, though, is just everything about it is creepy. Like, all the animation is creepy. I have a theory that, like, if you watch that film, like, the first time you watch that film, if you're, like, in your teens or older, you just see how bad the animation is. The only people that really love that film is if you see it as a kid, it's got the nostalgia factor. It's very cool for that, but it doesn't have that great of a storyline compared to Toy Story 3, and it's just creepy. Toy Story 3 has a great story.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and vote on who we think.
Just so you know, his name is Hero Boy.
Oh, Hero Boy. Yes, Hero Boy.
Hero Boy.
So he's
Yeah.
the main character.
Brady. No, that doesn't mean main character. That just means he's the hero.
When you look up Polar Express cast, the first thing is Tom Hanks.
Yeah, exactly. Yes,
He's
exactly.
the biggest actor.
Yeah, okay. But again, you remember that. You remember the Hot Chocolate
character.
song. You remember all that. But anyway.
Do I remember
The
the hot
stamp
sauce?
of the ticket.
You should.
Anyway.
Classic.
The kid who plays Hero Boy is the kid from Spy Kids.
Of course he is. He's like the little child. That's wonderful. Yeah. So at that time he would have been a big actor as well because he would have had the Spy Kids movie coming out. Yeah. Okay. Well, you can't say that Tom Hanks
means
is.
that he is on the level of Tom Hanks, so he's replaced as the top.
Okay. Well. Anyway, so let's go ahead and vote. So who thinks that Toy Story 3 is the better movie against Polar Express?
It's got to be Toy Story 3.
Yep. Me too.
It's 2. No. Okay.
I think Toy Story 3.
So we have 3. I say Polar Express.
I say Polar Express.
Okay, so 3 to 2. So Toy Story 3 moves on. I think it's just because. I think one is because it's so nostalgic, but also like We have two. I personally didn't think 3 was the best. I think Toy Story 1,
I
like,
kind of forgot about
and I think when we get to that, I think that's gonna win.
They were holding hands in a furnace.
That one got me. But like, I didn't think Lotso was that good. Like, I predicted Lotso was the villain right away. Like, I didn't. There was no question in my mind.
Not even a questionable thing.
Okay, so we're doing Apollo 13, which is the 8th seed, against Catch Me If You Can, which is the 9th seed. Mr. Talkin is taking Apollo 13, and I am taking Catch Me If You Can. Mr. Talkin, I'll let you go first.
All right. Well, Apollo 13 is apparently, from what I've heard, considered to be one of the most realistic ones. And it really just does have a lot of suspense, and it really just has a great cast. I mean, if you go through that cast, it has Tom Hanks as one of the main characters. But I forget who all the other actors are in it, but it is a list of very, very famous actors at the time. It grossed very well for its time. It's just a very strong movie overall.
Okay, so what I'm gonna say is just like what you said. There was a lot of big name actors. Tom Hanks going against Leonardo DiCaprio, and in his prime, right when like everyone was just in love with him. You know, he had just like gotten out of being a kid, and he was like kind of an adult. That's why he played the teen role. It's a true story, and like I think that movie would be so easy if you take Tom Hanks out of it and you put anyone else in that police officer role. I think it's It's Leo's film, but I think Tom Hanks stays in there, and I think he just adds so many more layers to the film.
My rebuttal to that would be that obviously Apollo 13 is also based on a real story, and the stakes there are much higher. Like the stakes there, these guys are potentially going to die up in space. Catch Me If You Can is a great film. The stakes aren't quite as high though, and it's not as well known of a story. Sometimes like getting into understanding a story that you knew is kind of really helps. And we just got some help, but Bill Paxton and Kevin Bacon, two of the other big names in there, obviously all pretty much at the top of their game in the 90s when this film came out.
Right. Yeah, I would just to rebut what you were saying. Exactly, Bill Paxton and Kevin Bacon at the top of their game. So, I think that also helps the film automatically. Not that Tom Hanks hurts it in any way, but I think that it's easier for the film to just automatically be on the path to greatness. I think. You have Christopher Walken in Catch Me If You Can. I mean, and I'm not trying to downplay Christopher Walken, but like you have Christopher Walken. I can't even think of another big name actor. I can think of Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Hanks, and Christopher Walken. And when you have like Tom Hanks is talking about Leonardo DiCaprio when he's like in that cell in I think Russia or somewhere because he's run away, and like they're like, oh, we'll just leave him here and he'll die, and he's like, no, like we have to take him home, and like you see like he kind of sees like a father figure in there, so he portrays more than he had to. Okay, we're gonna vote. So for the votes, Addie, you want to go ahead and start?
I'm gonna have to go with Apollo 13.
Luke?
Catch Me If You Can.
Apollo 13.
Even though I was arguing for Apollo 13, I actually enjoy Catch Me If You Can more. I just really enjoy that film. I think it's a lot of fun. Both are great. This is one of my toughest ones, but I'm going Catch Me If You Can.
And I am also going Catch Me If You Can, so that means Catch Me If You Can will take Toy Story 3 in the quarterfinals when we get to that. On to the next one. We have Saving Private Ryan as the number 5 seed with Luke Portz arguing that one against Sleepless in Seattle with Mr. Talkin, and that is the number 12 seed. So you guys want to go ahead and get started. Let's have Luke start because Mr. Talkin started last one.
Okay, so Saving Private Ryan, like the most iconic war film maybe of all time. That first 10 minutes of the D-Day landing, it's so intense. They have the shaky camera feel in there. You feel like you're in the scene. And then after that, the story, it's got all of these competing morals in it. Like all of the guys that are going to save Private Ryan, hence the movie, hence the name. They,
Clever title.
yeah, they're constantly talking amongst each other like, well, this kid better be worth it. Why are we even here? And it makes you think. It's a film that is not only really entertaining and really immersive, but it also makes you attached and makes you think, makes you think about these scenarios in the film.
Wonderful. Okay, Mr. Talkin.
All right, so for Sleepless in Seattle, Sleepless in Seattle is kind of one of the most iconic romantic comedies. Like when you think of romantic comedies, there are a few others that probably get up to that level now, but at least in the 90s, at least of its time, it probably was pretty much it. The only other one that I can think of that might have been as famous at the time was When Harry Met Sally, And really, like, when you think of romantic comedies over time, Sleepless in Seattle is that. And again, it's Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. Obviously, also kind of reprised some of the roles in You've Got Mail, which is also on our bracket. But Sleepless in Seattle is by far the better of those two films. But even though I'm arguing for it, Saving Private Ryan is, I mean, those opening 20 minutes are perhaps the best footage I've ever seen of anything that is trying to depict what war is like. It is Saving Private Ryan. It's just got to be it, even though Sleepless in Seattle, if it had been up against a lot of other films on here, I might have voted for it, but it's got a rough draw here.
Very unfortunate. I don't think there needs to be rebuttals. Pretty much stated. I think this is going to be a unanimous one, but we'll go ahead. Addie, who's winning? Saving Private Ryan or Sleepless in Seattle?
Saving Private Ryan.
Luke, I know you're going for Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
Saving Private Ryan.
Same here, Saving Private Ryan.
So
Saving
the
Private Ryan?
Slaving.
That'd
Whoa.
be a very different film.
different film.
That is a different
So the unanimous vote there is Saving Private Ryan, of course. All right, on to our next bracket. We have Jack Gaffney taking on Toy Story 2, which is the number 4 seed, against Mr. Talking again, with the number 13 seed, which is Philadelphia. So I'm going to let Mr. Gaffney go so that Mr. Talkin has time to kind of breathe.
So with Toy Story 2, at least in my opinion, it's one of the more, I think it's a very it's a great new addition to the Toy Story series, and Tom Hanks, it shows just how he interacts with different toys in the scenario that he's in, and yeah.
All right, that was an interesting way to go about that, but
Hanks with a
okay.
lot of toys.
Yeah.
Do you want to jump in on that, or?
Sure. Okay, so to help Gaffney out there, Toy Story 2 I think is wonderful because I think it also kind of begs the question of what happens when a toy is injured. What happens when a toy gets ruined? What happens with the kid? Does they lose interest and all that? I think also it shows kind of a testament to Woody's character, because Woody has a choice. He's like, well, I can sit in this glass box and just relax for the rest of my life and be cherished, or I can go back to Andy and I can be played with for maybe another year or two, and then he knew there was going to be an ending, or he could sit in a box and be cherished, and he decided to go back to Andy.
All right. So then we get to Philadelphia, the 13 seed. It's 1993 legal drama. The main two actors in it are, of course, Tom Hanks, but also has Denzel Washington in it, and dealt with a lot of big issues. I think this was one that was pretty brave for these two actors to even take this role, because Tom Hanks plays the role of an attorney who is basically hiding the fact that he is homosexual because he fears that he will be discriminated against and possibly fired from his job. But he ends up at some point in his life contracting HIV, and once he starts having signs of that, it comes out that, of course, he is homosexual and he is fired. And the whole thing is about this discrimination lawsuit, and I think just the way that they play up the relationship between Tom Hanks' character and Denzel Washington, who is an attorney that helps him, takes on the suit, but is clearly not comfortable with Tom Hanks' character. I think the way they play that up is just really, really good. And I just want to kind of jump in one last thing. This was the first of two back-to-back Best Actor Oscars for Tom Hanks, with the other one coming for Forrest Gump, which we'll eventually get to.
Yeah.
So Philadelphia, it's really kind of sad that it ended up only being a 13 seed, but it's just such a good film.
Yeah. One last thing for Toy Story 2 is I think that, we hear this thing about sequelitis. It's very easy. You make a lot of money in one film. Well, let's just do the same thing the second time. And I think part of the reason that people actually don't like Toy Story 2 but also respect it at the same time is because it's so different. They could have literally done the exact same formula, but they decided to actually develop the story more and go into a completely different direction. And I think that's part of the reason there's 4 of them and that it's on this list. All right, let's go ahead and vote. Addie?
Toy Story 2.
Luke?
Toy Story 2.
Toy Story 2.
I adore Toy Story 2. I love it, but I'm going with Philadelphia. I think it is the better film.
Okay, I am going to have to say Philadelphia as well, but Toy Story 2 does win.
At least to put up a little bit of a fight.
Yeah. It is a great film. You should see it if you have the chance. On to our next bracket. We have the 3rd seed going up against the 14th seed. The 3rd seed is Toy Story 4. And Addie Fry is going to take that on against You've Got Mail. Against, yeah, you guessed it, it's Mr. Talkin still.
I'm just the old guy that does all the ones from the 90s and 80s.
All right, so we'll let Addie, because she hasn't spoken in a while. Addie, go ahead and start off with your reasoning why Toy Story 4 is better than You've Got Mail.
Toy Story 4, when I went to see it, it's absolutely an incredible story. It starts off with them going on a trip, and Bonnie has made this new toy, and everybody is like really confused, and nobody knows if this thing is really a toy or not. And going on this journey, Forky, they're trying to protect him for Bonnie, and he gets lost. And then throughout the story, Woody ends up finding Bo Peep, who has been gone, and that reunion was just so great, and it was amazing to see how their connection throughout the rest of the movie actually brought Woody to end up realizing that being a lost toy instead of being with Bonnie was something more important that he wanted, and it changed his entire outlook on being a toy and what he was supposed to do.
Okay, so on the other side of that, we've got the, it's the 14 seed, You've Got Mail, which once again has Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, kind of having very similar, somewhat similar roles to Sleepless in Seattle, in the fact that they're the two main leads in a romantic comedy, but they're a little bit more antagonistic towards each other in this one. Tom Hanks plays a owner of a large chain of sort of like a Barnes & Noble-like chain of bookstores, whereas Meg Ryan owns sort of the mom and pop, sort of the equivalent of that, although it's obviously just her, so not mom and pop technically. And she is worried that his big bookstore coming into town will basically bankrupt her, so she kind of goes to battle against him, and they're having this discussion through email that they're getting advice, that she's getting advice from him, but neither one of them knows that it's the other person for most of the movie. It's kind of a fun little conceit that they kind of play with there. But in a sense, this is kind of like the not as good little brother or sister to Sleepless in Seattle. It's a good film, but it's not a great film.
All right, so Addie, go ahead with your rebuttal.
Honestly, I've never seen the film, so it's not.
Perfect. So you have no. All right. Well, then I'm gonna go ahead and You've never seen Toy Story 4. You've never seen You've Got Mail.
You've Got Mail.
Okay. Well, from
what I heard.
All right. So I've seen You've Got Mail, and I just honestly I just don't. I think it's like a typical love story. I think like the idea is clever, I guess, but for the most part, it's. I mean, I'm looking at my watch. I know how it's gonna end, and there's nothing really new about it. It's cool to be like, oh, like they don't know that they're talking to each other, but it's like after you figure that out, you're like, well, they're going to. Like it's not like they're never gonna figure this out. So it's just kind of your stereotypical love story in my opinion.
I actually haven't had a chance to see Toy Story 4 yet. I feel like it's probably the better movie, but just by default, I'm going to, I guess, vote for You've Got Mail just because I've at least seen it and I know that it's good.
All right, so you've got.
I can't officially say that for Toy Story 4 yet.
So You've Got Mail for Mr. Talkin. Addie, what's your choice?
Toy Story 4.
Okay, so we've got 1 and 1. Luke, go ahead.
I'll go for Toy Story. Yeah.
All right.
I'll go for Toy Story 4.
And I will also go for Toy Story 4, so that's Toy Story 4 taking that seed. All right, next up, we're going to move right along. We have Toy Story, which is the 6th seed. All of these movies very successful, so they're all on our bracket. And then we have the 11th seed, which is Big. So Addie is going to take on Toy Story, and Mr. Talkin's going to take on Big. So same two people, different movies.
So Big is kind of one of Tom Hanks' early breakout movies. It's a really, really cute movie. It's, of course, this idea of this kid that wishes that he could do all these things that adults could do, and he gets thrown into an adult's body because he makes a wish at this weird, like, booth thing where this machine grants his wish, and he becomes Tom Hanks. So he is like a kid in Tom Hanks' body, and he does all these childish things. And And it's funny because, of course, we see his growth and his maturation as it goes through. But it really was a breakout film for Tom Hanks, so it has to be on this bracket, especially for that reason. It was definitely one that the only reason it made it on here is because the inflation adjustment, because, of course, being from the 80s, it otherwise made nowhere near enough money. But big, very, very cool movie.
All right, Addie, go ahead.
The first Toy Story, I mean, such an iconic film, and it's just, it started the entire series, and it made You Got a Friend in Me, the song that we all know. It made that a huge thing. The story is just adorable with finding a toy's purpose.
Okay. Rebuttals?
I don't really have anything to add as far as that. I mean, Toy Story is the beginning of, it's not just the beginning of that, but it's the beginning of Pixar for the most part. I mean, Pixar existed before this, but this is their first, to my knowledge, feature film at least. So it really is just on a larger scale. It's got that type of significance that even though Big is a great film, Toy Story has that significance of being, kind of what really launched Pixar.
Right. Okay. Addie, anything to add?
I mean, Big was a really good film, but I also just feel like Toy Story speaks out to more of our families and kids in general.
Okay, so let's go ahead and vote. Addie?
Toy Story.
Luke?
Toy Story.
Toy Story.
I agree. Toy Story, it's just too important. Toy Story is one of the few on this bracket that I think can win the whole thing.
Okay, so Toy Story moves on because my vote is there as well. Okay, on to our 7th argument. We have the 7th seed going up against the 10th seed. We have Castaway, which Luke Ports will be arguing for. And then we have the 10th seed, which is the Green Mile, with Addie Fry taking that one on. Luke, go ahead and start.
All right, so Castaway. Great movie. If there ever was a Tom Hanks movie, this is it. Because basically for the majority of the movie, it's only him and then also a volleyball. The only movie that will ever get you emotionally attached to a volleyball. Wilson is the best part of this movie, but also it's very immersive. You feel attached to him. Like that moment when he first gets the fire and all of a sudden he's just screaming in joy. It feels so you feel so happy for him because he's so happy that he got this fire after an hour into the movie. All right. That's me.
So The Green Mile, it is a really intense story. He plays the guard to these convicted murderers who are on the Green Mile. And during the movie, you get so attached to each one of the characters through this guard that is watching them all go through these their thoughts of what they did in their lives and how everything just came to this one moment where they're eventually going to die. And each one of them is so different in their own way. When each one of them goes through and their sentence is carried out, you feel distraught in each one of their deaths, and it's just amazing how he gets you so connected to each one of the characters.
All right, so we'll go ahead and start the voting as to which one's better, Castaway or the Green Mile. Addie?
I'd say the Green Mile.
Castaway.
Castaway.
I gotta go Castaway just because I haven't seen the Green Mile. It's one of the 2 that on this list that I haven't seen.
Okay, I would say the Green Mile, but it doesn't matter. Castaway takes the win, and we go on to our last argument for the initial bracket before we go on to the quarterfinals, which is the number 2 seed, my personal favorite movie of all time, Forrest Gump, and I will be arguing for that one. And then we have up against it, I really don't think this is a competition, but this is how it worked. The 15th seed, which is possibly one of Tom Hanks' worst films, The Davinci Code. And that is going to be argued by Mr. Talkin.
Do we just want to vote?
Really, though. I'll let you go first.
All right. The Davinci Code is fantastic.
Okay.
The Davinci Code is a fun movie. It's the book was a big hit book. The Davinci Code's a fun movie. There's nothing that terrible about it in my opinion, although obviously many of the critics disagree with me. But yeah, it's not Forrest Gump. This is the biggest mismatch on this bracket for sure. As much as the Davinci Code might be entertaining and might be fun to watch for about 2.5 hours, you never have to go back and watch it again. whereas Forrest Gump is great. So go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So what I'm going to say is Forrest Gump also started out as a book. Forrest Gump is amazing. It's a movie where you feel all emotions. Like you're so attached to the character, you're so connected, and you just want him to succeed. And like when he's wronged, and like Jenny is a terrible person, and all these things. Like you literally watch him grow from a child to all the way up to an adult, and you feel like that movie's, I think, Brady, you can check this, but it's over 2.5 hours long, and I personally don't think, at least the people that I've talked to have never said it's too long, like because he holds your attention, and like it's so, as unbelievable as that movie is that somebody could do all those things, like Tom Hanks just adds such charisma and such, like you love it. You love every minute of the movie.
It's 2 hours and 22 minutes.
2 hours and 22 minutes, so a little under 2.5 hours. I was wrong. But it's so amazing. It's a movie, I mean, literally you say Forrest Gump and instantly everybody thinks of, life's like a box of chocolates or another quote. It's so quotable, memorable, excuse me. And it's just, it's an amazing movie. There's no competition here. So go ahead.
And I'm actually just going to, dump on Davinci Code more and praise Forrest Gump more. But this is one that I always talk about when I'm teaching in my English classes, about this being sort of the equivalent of like the American epic, because it goes over such a span. And you even have like it literally starts in medias res, just like the Odyssey and Iliad does. So I mean, it really captures every significant event of this time period. If there is a criticism of Forrest Gump, it is simply that it's a little unbelievable that this one man was able to be literally at the center, or pretty close to the center of all these different events. But it's fun, it's significant, it is up against the Davinci Code, which is one of the worst on this bracket. It's Forrest Gump. I'll just go ahead and state that as my vote now.
Okay, we'll just go to voting. Obviously, I'm Forrest Gump as well. Addie?
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump.
Yeah, okay. So Forrest Gump moves on.
Is that our first 5-0?
I think so, yeah, that's the
our
first. So we're moving on to the quarterfinals. So all of the winners of the previous bracket are going on. So we have Toy Story 3 versus Catch Me If You Can. We have Saving Private Ryan versus Toy Story 2. Toy Story 4 versus Toy Story. And we have Castaway versus Forrest Gump. So these are going to be kind of lightning round because we want to get to the semifinals and the finals. We're going to spend a little more time because obviously that goes down to just 2 arguments and then on to 1 to find out what we think is the best Tom Hanks film. So we're going to start with Toy Story 3 versus Catch Me If You Can. So for the quarterfinals, we're just going to open this up to voting to save some time so we can spend more time on the semifinals and the finals. So unless somebody has something that they want to say or add about a movie, if they think that it should have won or, is that people have forgotten before they vote, we'll do that. But other than that, we're just going to go to voting. So Toy Story 3 versus Catch Me If You Can. Addie?
Toy Story 3.
Toy Story 3.
Toy Story 3.
I agree. Toy Story 3 is just far better than Catch Me If You Can. I love Catch Me If You Can. But
All right, I was going to say Catch Me If You Can, but it doesn't matter. My vote is lost. Toy Story 3 takes the win on that one. On to our next one. We have Saving Private Ryan versus Toy Story 2. Addie?
I would like to say something really quick
All right.
about Saving Private Ryan. It has defined the genre of war movies ever since then. Like, someone says a war movie, you think of Saving Private Ryan. But, Pixar, it was already done at this point. It was a formulated thing. They were just sticking to this formula. Whereas Saving Private Ryan was relatively new. I mean, there was war movies before that, obviously, but it was the first one to try it on such a scale.
okay. Toy Story 2, I'm going to defend it a little bit. Toy Story 2, I honestly think it's very underrated among the Toy Story movies. I think it is right there with the other Toy Stories. I think 1 and 3 are generally talked about as being the best 2. I haven't seen 4 yet, but 2 is right there with them. Jessie and all the other new characters are really, really great. Of course, I'm saying this, and I'm still going to vote the other way, but Toy Story 2, I just wanted to make the point that Toy Story 2 is not a slouch in this matchup.
I would agree
It is
with
a very
that.
worthy movie.
I would agree with that. Okay, so we'll go straight to voting if nobody has anything else to say. All right, Addie?
Saving Private Ryan.
Saving Private Ryan.
Saving Private Ryan.
Same.
And that makes it a complete sweep with Saving Private Ryan taking all of the votes. All right, on to our next bracket. We have Toy Story 4 versus the original Toy Story. Does anybody have anything to say?
Toy Story made Pixar. I haven't seen Toy Story 4, but Toy Story 1 is a fantastic movie. It made Pixar. None of these other films, anything from the Toy Stories to Cars, which are the best of Pixar movies, but whatever, to Incredibles, to Finding Nemo, none of these would have happened had Toy Story flopped. And Toy Story, like, there's even a TED Talk where one of the main guys talks about a lot of the stuff that they kind of broke out. They broke a lot of the rules of normal Disney storytelling. Toy Story.
All right, so Mr. Talking About's Toy Story. Addie?
Toy Story.
Toy Story.
Toy Story.
And that is a clean sweep with Toy Story taking it. Oh boy, here's where I think it's going to get interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last one we have for the quarterfinals is Castaway taking on Forrest Gump. I'm not going to start off, but I feel like I'm going to have to say something. We'll start with the voting, and then we'll go from there.
Jump in.
All
Say
right.
what you gotta say.
Okay. So, here's the thing that I'm going to say. I'm going to say that because I feel like what everyone's going to say when they vote Castaway is because, oh, well, Tom Hanks carries the whole film by himself. And that's true, and I can't, like, take that away from him. But what I will say is you have to remember that in Forrest Gump, you have Robin Wright, you have Sally Field, you have Gary Sinise. Like, these are people at the top of their game at this time. And Tom Hanks, who was no slouch at the time, but he was not as established, I don't believe, at this time as, like, Gary Sinise or Sally Fields. Like, these people should have been the reason that you went to the film, but the reason you remember it is Tom Hanks. He was able to carry the film, but also, I would say, outshine everyone else in that film. It's a little easier when it's a volleyball as the person you have to outshine. I think that, yes, it's very, very hard and very talented to be able to hold somebody's attention for 2 hours, but I think that him being able to do that against all those people is more impressive.
I think you make a good point, and I think a big part of this is that this is really about what is, at least in the way that I'm voting on this is about what is the best movie, not about the best performance. And even still, I might go Forrest Gump. You got to remember that this is the second, along with Philadelphia, back-to-back years that he won Best Actor. Castaway is an amazing film for the fact that he's able to carry that movie by himself for so long. But Forrest Gump did get him a Best Actor picture, and you know, some people might disagree with this, and if you disagree, that's fine. But I still would argue that it's the better film.
Yes, I would
My
also.
vote is Forrest Gump.
My vote is also Forrest Gump. Addie?
Forrest Gump.
I stand with Wilson.
I'm gonna go with Forrest Gump.
Okay, Forrest Gump takes the win there. So this concludes episode 1 of the Bracket Podcast. We were talking about the best Tom Hanks film, and we're going to come out with episode 2 here soon with the semifinals, which is Toy Story 3 taking on Saving Private Ryan. We're going to have Toy Story taking on Forrest Gump. That will not just be voting. We'll actually go into arguments again like we did at the beginning. And then we'll get into the finals and see what this panel thinks is the best Tom Hanks film. I think it's Forrest Gump, but we'll see. So stay tuned, and we'll come out with another episode soon. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.